It was my second year undercover when my fiance's childhood friend, Carrie Delgado, got dragged into a back room and beaten half to death. His attitude had finally caught the wrong person's eye. He looked right at me, begging for help, telling them he knew me, but I couldn't blow my cover. So I just stared back, dead-eyed, like I didn't care at all. That night, they wrecked one of his legs. My fiancé found me afterward and slapped me across the face. Why didn't you save him? If you just said you knew him, they would have let him go out of respect for you. The operation was still running. I couldn't tell her anything. I figured she dumped me. Instead, she just sighed and turned to go. Forget it. I love you too much. But don't let it happen again. When the operation finally wrapped, I made plans to take her out and tell her the truth. That's when my mom called. Desmond Dickerson, please come save me. Your fiancé took me to a restaurant for dinner, and the bill came to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then she just vanished. And the manager won't let me leave. By the time I got there, my mom was sitting stiff in a chair, white as a sheet. The second she saw me, relief washed over her face, like I was the only thing keeping her from drowning. Desmond, you're here. She started to get up, but someone behind her shoved her back down by the shoulders. So this is your son. Good. Perfect timing. Your mother ate at my restaurant, refused to pay, and then smashed an antique I bought at auction for $13 million. The guy's voice was ice cold. He talked like that piece of porcelain mattered more than the woman shaking in front of him. I stepped closer and looked down at the shards all over the floor. My mom's guilt poured out before I could say a word. Desmond, I didn't break it on purpose. Faye Harding shoved me. I lost my balance, and her voice cracked into a quiet sob. Faye shoved you? Something cold twisted in my chest. A possibility I didn't want to name. I didn't want it to be true. In my head, Faye had always been reasonable, always understanding. Don't be scared. If it was an accident, I'll pay for it. I pulled out my phone and called Faye. The call didn't go through. The manager was already out of patience. Every word he threw at me was sharper than the last. Kid, you've been on that phone for a few minutes now. You done yet? The second he finished, every employee in the place closed in around US $13,030,000. You're nobody. How exactly do you plan on paying me back? That's why they'd surrounded us. They thought we'd run. I lowered the phone and looked up at my mom. Mom, who ordered the food? Your mother did. Obviously. Someone answered before she could. The voice belonged to the exact person I'd been trying to reach. Faye. I turned toward the entrance. She stood in the doorway, one arm holding Carrie up, her face completely blank. Your mother said she wanted to treat me to dinner. She handed me the menu and told me to order. If you don't believe me, ask the staff. Check the cameras. That's right. This lady said she was treating the young miss to dinner. The bills on her got nothing to do with anyone else. My mom's guilt got worse, her words tumbling out. Desmond, it's true. I did invite Faye to eat. You two were fighting over what happened with Carrie, so I asked her out to apologize. But she said she wanted French food and brought me here. I couldn't read a single thing on the menu. It was all in another language. So Faye ordered for me the food and bottle after bottle of wine. I had no clue anything here cost that much. The wine alone was way more than I could even imagine. With everything out in the open, there was nothing I didn't get anymore. My mom had been set up by Faye. She wanted me to feel it for myself. That helpless agony of watching your own family get tortured right in front of you. Faye, can we talk? I was going to take her to the restroom and explain what really happened that night. My fingers barely touched her wrist before she let out a short, mocking laugh and slowly pushed my hand away. She met my confusion head on, her eyes full of cold calculation. There's nothing left for us to talk about. The night you let Carrie suffer and did nothing, you and I stopped having anything to say to each other. If you're so desperate to negotiate, take it up with the manager and the owner of that antique. Just like I thought. Faye had brought my mom here to eat for one reason only. To settle the score for Carrie. A few $100,000 I could scrape together. $10 million was impossible. Carrie, come sit over here. Seat in the house for the show. Carrie's face lit up with the thrill of payback he'd been waiting for. Then his eyes landed on me and they went cold and hateful. Desmond, you stood there and watched me almost die that night. Now it's our turn to return the favor. His friends all stared at me with the same righteous disgust. Like I was something rotten. Disgusting. Did a dog eat your conscience? You? I just stood there and watched while they broke Carrie's legs. Now karma's caught up. If he can't pay, then it's his turn to get his legs broken and thrown out like trash. My hands clenched into fists on instinct. Fire roaring through my chest. That night, I'd already found a way to get carried out. But he'd gone and mouth off right back at the bosses, basically begging them to finish the job. I was scared he'd keep talking and blow my cover. So I had no choice but to punch him in the mouth myself. And even then, those guys wouldn't let it go. They broke his legs and threw him out. With an attitude like that, even without that night, Somebody would have beaten him eventually. Hey, everything's settled. So pay up already. I've got a flight to catch in 2 hours. Victor's demand snapped me back to the present. But $10 million on the spot was money I just did not have. My mom saw the strain on my face, and the guilt in her eyes only got worse. Des, I'm sorry. This is all my fault. If I hadn't invited Faye out to dinner, if I hadn't ordered blindly off a menu I couldn't even read, none of this would have happened. I quickly spoke up to calm her down. Mom, stop blaming yourself. This has nothing to do with you. When the person you trust most turns on you, there's no way to see it coming. But that kind of money, how could we ever pay it back? Tears ran down her face, and the pain in her chest flared up sharper than before. I reached out and steadied her. Mom, what's wrong? Is it your heart again? You two done with the waterworks? Because if you are, it's time to settle the damn bill. The words had barely left his mouth before Alfred stalked closer, glaring at us with open menace. The nerve. Can't even afford a meal. And you walk into a place like this. Pathetic. Absolute trash. Been running this restaurant for years. And you two are the most worthless deadbeats I've ever seen. Carrie watched the crowd pile on us, mother and son, and the satisfaction practically radiated off him. Faye watched me too, eyes gleaming with payback, then smiled. Carrie, don't worry. The best part is still coming. I'm gonna make sure Desmond learns his lesson. He needs to understand that being cold and heartless comes with consequences. Better to deal with it now than marry him and spend a lifetime facing that coldness. Faye still wanted to marry me. I didn't want to marry her anymore back then, because my work needed total secrecy. I had no right to date or start a family like a normal person. But Faye fell for me at first sight and came after me hard. No matter how many times I turned her down, she kept coming back, never giving up. It wasn't until she saved my mom twice and ended up hospitalized herself from a beating, I finally gave in. She grabbed my hand and said, "You're on my ship now. Don't even think about escaping." The Harding princess, crying because she was so moved, had melted something inside me that day. Memories were beautiful. Reality was cruel. Faye curled her lips into a cold smile. Desmond, if you can't pay up, the owner of that antique and the manager will strip your mother naked and break your legs before throwing you out. The moment those words left her mouth, every pair of eyes in the room locked onto us. Hungry for the show? He's done for. There's no way he can afford that kind of money. He's just some nobody. Honestly, someone like him was never good enough for Faye. At least she finally came to her senses. Victor's eyes crawled over my mom's body, and when he spoke, his voice was full of menace. If you really can't pay, I'll tear the clothes off this old hag myself. As for breaking legs, I'll leave that to the manager. My mom's face went completely white. The shock set off her old heart condition. She clutched her chest with both hands and collapsed to the floor. She knocked a glass of red wine off the table as she fell, and the wine splashed all over Victor's shoes. You stupid woman. Smashing my antique wasn't enough. Now you've ruined my shoes and my clothes too. I've got a flight to catch for a business trip, and you're out here begging for it. Before I could react, he raised his foot and stomped down hard on my mom's stomach. No, stop. Faye shot to her feet, but Carrie grabbed her wrist. Ow, Faye. My leg hurt so bad. Faye turned and saw Carrie's bandaged leg. The alarm on her face shifted to pity, and then slowly to something cold and empty. Carrie, don't stand up. Sit down. So you won't go rushing in to save them? Looking at the redness around Carrie's eyes, Faye answered without hesitation, no. On the other side of the room, every staff member in the restaurant had closed ranks around me. I couldn't get anywhere near my mom. It was curled around her stomach, a low, broken sound forcing its way through her teeth. Mom, are you okay? No answer. My chest tightened another notch. Move. Her condition is acting up. I already told you, I'll find a way to pay. They didn't budge. More guys stepped in to fill the gaps. Pay? How exactly are you gonna pay? I'm leaving the city in 2 hours and I'm never coming back. Where am I supposed to collect from? You give me an address and a bank account number. Once I have the money, I'll transfer. Bullshit. Talk is cheap. There are plenty of deadbeats who skip out on what they owe. If I let a couple of strangers walk out of here, I'd be the idiot. The words barely left his mouth before he raised his foot and stomped on my mom's stomach. A second time. Ah. 2 full force blows. She curled into a tight ball, shaking, and a mouthful of blood spilled from her lips. Panic burned through me. I threw myself forward, fighting to break through the wall of bodies. Tighten up. He knows how to fight. The wall of bodies didn't stand a chance. For 2 years, I had played the quiet, submissive nobody to maintain my cover in one of the most ruthless syndicates on the West Coast. I had swallowed my pride, taken beatings, and watched terrible things happen because the mission demanded it. The mission was everything. But the mission was over. The first waiter who lunged at me caught a palm strike squarely under his jaw. His eyes rolled back into his skull before he even hit the floor. The second guy tried to grab me around the waist. I pivoted, driving my elbow down into the back of his neck with a sickening crack. He crumpled instantly. "Stop him!" Alfred shrieked, backing away so fast he knocked over a chair. 3 more staff members rushed me simultaneously. I didn't think, muscle memory took over. I swept the leg of the closest man, snapping my heel into the second one's kneecap, tearing the ACL. As he went down screaming, I grabbed the third man by his collar and belt, using his own momentum to hurl him directly into a heavy oak dining table. It shattered under his weight. In less than 10 seconds, 6 men were groaning on the floor. The rest of the staff froze terrified, their false bravado evaporating. I didn't care about them. My eyes were locked on Victor. The smug arrogance had vanished from his face, replaced by a pale, slack-jawed panic. He took a clumsy step backward, looking frantically toward the door. "Why you assault me, and you're going to prison forever? I have lawyers." "I have." I crossed the room in 3 strides. He swung a desperate, wild punch. I batted his arm aside, grabbed the lapels of his expensive custom suit, and drove my forehead into the bridge of his nose. Blood exploded from his nostrils. Victor wailed, his hands flying to his face. But I wasn't done. He had stomped on my mother. I swept my leg behind his and slammed him down hard onto the marble floor right next to the puddle of wine and the shattered porcelain he cared so much about. Before he could scramble away, I placed my boot squarely on his right shin. "You have a flight to catch?" I whispered, my voice unrecognizable even to myself. "You're going to miss it." I drove my heel down. The bone snapped with the loud, sharp report of a dry branch breaking. Victor's scream was deafening, a high-pitched, agonizing sound that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. He writhed, clutching his mangled leg. I stepped over him, dismissing his existence entirely, and dropped to my knees beside my mother. She was completely limp, her breathing shallow and ragged. Blood stained her lips, and her face was terrifyingly gray. The pulse at her neck was weak, fluttering like a dying bird. "Mom. Mom, stay with me," I choked out, pressing my fingers to her wrist. My hands, completely steady while breaking 3 men apart, were trembling now. "Desmond, are you insane?" Faye's voice cracked like a whip across the room. I didn't look at her. I reached into my jacket, pulling out a heavily encrypted satellite phone. The one I wasn't supposed to use unless I was making my final report or calling in a drone strike. I hit the emergency dial. It rang exactly once. "Director Vance," a calm, authoritative voice answered. "Code red. Omega Protocol." I barked. "Officer down. I need an immediate medical evac, critical condition, trauma and cardiac failure. Location, Laura. Restaurant, downtown. Lock down the perimeter. No one leaves." "Copy that, Agent Dickerson. Medevac is 3 minutes out. Cavalry is with them. Hold your position." I tossed the phone aside and ripped my jacket off, balling it up to elevate my mother's legs to keep blood flowing to her heart. "Who the hell are you calling?" Alfred yelled from the other side of the room, clutching a wine bottle like a weapon. "The police? Good. I already pressed the panic button under the bar. You're done, kid. You destroyed millions of dollars of property, assaulted my staff, and broke a VIP's leg." "Desmond," Faye said, her voice shaking as she took a hesitant step toward me. Carrie was still sitting in his chair, eyes wide with genuine terror staring at the carnage I had unleashed. What did you just do? You're acting like a thug. You really are just trash, aren't you?" I finally looked up at her. The woman I had almost married. The woman who had sworn she loved me, who had relentlessly pursued me, and who had just manipulated my innocent mother into a brutal beating, just to teach me a lesson. "Don't speak," I said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "If you say another word to me, Faye, I will make you regret you were ever born." She flinched as if I had struck her. Her jaw trembled, and she looked toward Carrie for support, but Carrie was frantically trying to push his wheelchair backward toward the kitchen doors. Sirens wailed in the distance, multiplying rapidly. The shrill sound of local police cruisers cut through the night air. "Hear that?" Alfred sneered, his confidence returning. He pointed a trembling finger at me. "That's the end of your life. You and your deadbeat mother." 2 heavily armed SWAT vehicles tore past the front windows, tires screeching. But they weren't local PD. They were matte black armored SUVs. The sky above us suddenly roared to life as the deafening chop of a helicopter's rotors descended directly over the restaurant, vibrating the glass of the storefront. The front doors were blasted open, torn off their hinges by a battering ram. A dozen men in full tactical gear poured into the restaurant, assault rifles raised. Federal agents. "Nobody move. Hands where we can see them." The remaining restaurant staff screamed and dropped to the floor. Alfred Frotze. Dropping the wine bottle, his hands shooting into the air. Victor still, groaning on the floor, squeezed his eyes shut in pain and confusion. 2 tactical medics broke from the formation, carrying a high-tech stretcher and trauma bags. They bypassed everyone and rushed straight to me. Agent Dickerson, the lead medic said, dropping to his knees. We've got her. I backed away, giving them room as they immediately hooked my mother up to a portable defibrillator and started in 4-line. A man in a sharp charcoal suit strolled through the shattered front doors. Director Vance. He surveyed the ruined dining room, the groaning men and the shattered tables before locking eyes with me. You wrapped the Hernandez cartel operation yesterday, Desmond, Vance said, calmly, stepping over a puddle of red wine. I told you to take a vacation. You have an interesting way of unwinding. The operation followed me home, Director. I replied, my voice raspy. Faye stood frozen, her eyes darting between the heavily armed federal agents, Director Vance and me. The blood had entirely drained from her face. Agent. Faye whispered, the word barely escaping her lips. Desmond, what? What are they talking about? Vance glanced at her, then back to me. Civilians. Collateral. I wiped a smear of Victor's blood off my knuckle. Arrest the manager. Arrest the man on the floor with the broken leg. Charge them with attempted murder of a federal agent's family member, extortion, and unlawful detainment. You can't do this, Victor screamed, spitting blood as 2 massive agents hauled him up by his armpits, ignoring his shattered leg. Do you know who I am? I'm Victor Thorn. That woman destroyed my Ming Dynasty vase. It's worth $13 million. I have rights. Director Vance sighed and signaled one of the forensic tech agents who had just walked in. The tech knelt by the shattered pieces of porcelain, put on a pair of latex gloves, and turned a shard over. He shone a UV light on it, then pulled out a small scraping tool. Ming Dynasty? The tech let out a dry chuckle. Director, this is a mass-produced resin clay hybrid. The manufacturer's stamp says made in Shenzhen 2023. It's worth maybe $45 on Amazon. Victor's face went completely slack. Alfred whimpered, sinking to his knees. A $45 vase used to extort $10 million, Vance noted, pulling a tablet from his coat. Interesting. You know, Agent Dickerson, my financial crimes division flagged this restaurant 3 months ago. Alfred here has been washing money for the very cartel you just dismantled. Mr. Thorne is one of their primary shell company directors. The silence in the room was absolute. The puzzle pieces clicked together in my head. They didn't just target my mother, because Faye brought her here. They recognized my mother. The cartel knew who I was, or at least suspected my connection. Victor and Alfred used Faye's petty revenge plot as the perfect cover to enact their own vengeance for my undercover work, framing it as a dispute over a bill. My mother? I asked, looking at the medics. We have her stabilized, but her heart took immense strain from the physical trauma, the medic reported. We need to airlift her to Walter Reed. Immediately. Go, y commanded. I watched as they loaded her onto the stretcher and rolled her out to the waiting chopper. I felt a hollow, terrifying coldness in my chest. If I had been 10 minutes later, I turned my attention back to the room. Faye was shaking violently, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. The invincible, arrogant princess was gone, replaced by someone staring at a reality she couldn't comprehend. Desmond, she sobbed, taking a step toward me. I didn't know. I swear, didn't know they were criminals. I just wanted you to understand how I felt when Carrie was hurt. I just wanted you to pay a little. To pay a little? I echoed, stepping slowly toward her. By forcing my mother into a $10 million debt? By watching a man stomp on her stomach while her heart failed? That was your lesson in empathy, Faye? It was an accident. I didn't think he would actually hit her. Carrie said. Carrie. I cut her off, my voice echoing off the walls. I turned my head slowly to look at the man sitting in the wheelchair. Carrie had managed to wheel himself halfway to the back exit, but 2 agents with rifles blocked his path. He looked like a cornered rat. Let's talk about Carrie, I said, walking toward him. Carrie shrank back into his seat. Keep him away from me, Carrie yelled at the agents. He's crazy. You saw what he did to those guys. He let the mob break my legs. Director, I said, not taking my eyes off Carrie. During the Hernandez raid, we secured the boss's personal audio files. The ones documenting his blackmail material. Did you happen to bring the drive? Standard protocol, Vance said, tapping his tablet. I have the cloud decrypt. Right here. Name, Carrie Delgado. Faye looked up, confused. What? What are you doing? Desmond, Carrie has nothing to do with. Play it, I commanded. Vance tapped the screen. The restaurant's own Bluetooth sound system seized moments ago by the tech team, suddenly broadcasted a high-quality audio recording. Please, Mr. Hernandez, I swear I didn't lose the shipment. The voice was unmistakably Carrie's, shrill and pathetic. You stole 4 kilos of product, Delgado. A deep, menacing voice replied. Hernandez, the man I had put in federal lockup yesterday. You thought you could skim from me and sell it to the street boys. No. Okay, yes, but I can pay you back. I have connections. My best friend, Faye Harding. Her family is loaded. I'll get the money from her. I'll tell her I'm starting a business. She'll give me anything I want. Just don't hurt me. Break the legs of that guy I was with tonight, Desmond. He's nobody. Punish him, let me go. The recording clicked off. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked at Faye. She was staring at Carrie, her eyes wide, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. Carrie, she whispered, her voice cracking. You were stealing drugs from a cartel. Carrie's face was slick with sweat. Faye, it's a deep fake. He's federal law enforcement. They can fake anything. He just wants to turn you against me to cover up his own cowardice. I didn't yell. I didn't hit him. I just leaned down so I was eye level with him. The night you got your legs broken, I said quietly, I was deep undercover. My wire was hot. I was 2 weeks away from bringing down the entire West Coast distribution network. I was in the room when Hernandez caught you. If I had revealed myself to save you, I would have died, my team would have died, and Hernandez would have escaped. But I still tried to save you. I punched you to knock you out so they wouldn't kill you for running your mouth. And how did you repay me? You sold me out to try and save your own skin. I stood up and looked at Vance. Accessory to cartel distribution, theft, and conspiracy. Take him. No. No. Carrie shrieked as 2 agents grabbed his wheelchair and roughly hauled him up by his arms, ignoring his protests about his legs. Faye, help me. Call your father. Get my lawyers. Faye didn't move. She didn't even look at him. She was staring at her own trembling hands, realizing the sheer magnitude of what she had done. She had thrown away the man she loved, tortured an innocent elderly woman, and aligned herself with monsters, all to protect a parasitic, drug-dealing rat who had planned to drain her family's wealth. Desmond, Faye wept, falling to her knees on the shattered porcelain. The sheer, crushing weight of her regret broke her posture completely. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cuff of my pants. I was blind. I was so stupid. Please, Desmond, I love you. You know I love you. We can fix this. I'll pay for the best doctors for your mother. I'll make my family ruin Victor and I'll do anything. Please forgive me. I looked down at her. I remembered the girl who had relentlessly pursued me, the girl who had cried in the hospital after saving my mother, the girl whose persistence had finally melted the ice around my heart. But that girl was gone, replaced by the cruel, arrogant woman who had watched my mother cough up blood and did nothing. I stepped back, pulling my pant leg from her grasp. There's nothing left for us to talk about, I said, repeating the exact words she had said to me an hour ago. Faye gasped, a horrific, gut-wrenching sound, as if I had driven a knife into her stomach. Victor, Alfred, and Carrie are going to federal prison. I continued, my voice entirely devoid of emotion. But you, Faye? You conspired to commit extortion. You lured my mother here. My agency will be freezing the Harding family assets by morning pending a full financial investigation. Your family's companies, your accounts, your properties, all of it locked down. Desmond, no, she begged, crawling toward me. My father, his company won't survive a federal freeze. We'll lose everything. You already did. I turned my back on her and walked toward the exit. Desmond. Faye screamed behind me, a primal wail of pure agony and despair. Desmond. I didn't stop. I walked out of the ruined restaurant, past the flashing red and blue lights, past the gawking crowd gathered behind the police barricades, and stepped into the cool night air. 2 months later, the sun was warm in the courtyard of the rehabilitation center. The autumn leaves were turning bright shades of gold and crimson, scattering across the manicured lawns. I pushed the wheelchair gently to a stop near a small fountain. It's beautiful today, Des, my mother said softly, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her color had returned. The surgery had been a success, and while the recovery was long, the doctors said her heart was stronger than it had been in years. It is, Mom, I smiled, sitting on the stone bench beside her. She reached out and took my hand, patting it gently. You're not wearing your suit today. No bad guys to catch? I took a desk assignment, I told her. Instructing the new recruits at Quantico. No more undercover work. No more secrets. She smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. Good. I want my son back. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the water cascade down the stone tiers of the fountain. Have you heard from her? My mother asked cautiously, not looking at me. She didn't need to say the name. Only through the legal briefings, I answered plainly. The Harding family went bankrupt trying to fight the federal injunctions. The board ousted her father. From what I understand, Faye avoided jail time by taking a plea deal, but she has hundreds of thousands in court fees. She's working as a waitress in some diner out in the suburbs to pay it off. My mother sighed softly. It's a tragedy. She had so much good in her once. People change, Mom. Sometimes the mask they wear just slips. Victor and Alfred hadn't been so lucky. With the cartel evidence I provided, federal prosecutors buried them. They were both serving 25 to life in maximum security for racketeering, money laundering, and assault on a federal dependent. Carrie Delgado was placed in the same facility. The Hernandez cartel had a long memory, and from the intelligence chatter we intercepted, Carrie's life in prison was a living hell, constantly hiding from the associates of the men he had stolen from. They had all reaped exactly what they sowed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a message from Director Vance. New recruits are ready for your lecture on Monday, Agent Dickerson. Enjoy the weekend. I locked the screen and put the phone away. For the first time in over 2 years, I didn't feel the crushing weight of a false identity, or the paranoid anxiety of looking over my shoulder. I was just Desmond. You want to stay out here a bit longer, or head back inside for lunch? I asked. My mother looked at the bright, clear sky and took a deep, steady breath. Let's stay out in the light a little longer, she said. I squeezed her hand. Whatever you want, Mom. I'm right here.